and he's with us now, fresh from Chicago, former sheriff of Milwaukee. Sheriff, America Sheriff David Clarke. Hey, Sheriff, good to have you, man.
It's great to be on. Don't scare me like that. When you said on from 9 to 10, I'm making my way over to the Bannon War Room, and I thought, holy crap, did I miss this one?
No, 10 to 11, we changed it after impeachment was over. So, no, you're good to go. He's expecting you 10 to 11 today live at Bannon's War Room right there in the historic Breitbart Embassy right by the Capitol, so you don't want to miss that. So, Sheriff, I'm disappointed you're not going to be at CPAC. You have to go back, but we're going to be there Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But Bernie Bros, the talk of the town. I've been covering it all day. How do you stop him?
That's a good question. The big mo, that's what you need in these sorts of things. I like to flash back because history repeats itself. Flashback to 2015 during the GOP nomination process, and once Donald Trump developed some momentum, there was no stopping him. And, there's a lot of parallels. Party, the RNC, let's face it, they did not want Trump. The other candidates all piled on him, just like they're doing with Sanders and a little bit with Bloomberg, because they see these guys as interlopers, that they're not really members of the club. I'm going to leave that to the voters, but I see a lot of parallels. So got 3 in now, and South Carolina I believe will be the witching hour for Joe Biden if Joe Biden doesn't win South Carolina. He can't even come in second. I think he's going to have to take a look in the mirror and have a heart-to-heart, and he's going to have to bow. And that's going to change the feel. It's going to change the dynamic. Where do his supporters go? So there's still a lot of moving and shaking to go on. But right now, yeah, Sanders, he's the man.
I agree with you, and I don't want to laugh. I really don't, because you never want to laugh at somebody's demise. But I was one of those that predicted Joe Biden to be out before Super Tuesday. This guy's run for president 4 times. He's never won a state. I heard a speech Saturday night after Sanders trounced him in Nevada, a state that he was actually ahead in 3 weeks ago. And he was saying, hey, we had a good showing tonight. We came in second. And I'm saying to myself, that's like saying I only gave up 5 runs in the first inning. It could have been 10, but I got out of the inning. Somebody hit into a double play. I mean, it's like, you got to be kidding me. You got trounced, and you're claiming some kind of Pyrrhic victory. The guy has turned into a clown show.
Yeah, he has, and it's kind of like using your analogy there. You gave up 5 in the first inning, you lost 65, and you said, hey, well, yeah, I could have given up 10. It's a tough situation for him to be in. He's got to say something. He's got to do something to help energize his base, who's probably very depleted right now with what's going on. And then I saw a story the other day that Sanders is actually gaining in South Carolina on Biden with the black vote. I think he's only like 5, 6, 7, 8 points behind. And when the thing first started, the primary season, I think Biden had like a 30-point lead with black voters, and that's falling off. So, I don't feel bad for Joe. Joe is he's full of himself. He wants to be president in the worst way, as do many of these people. But the fact is, he's had his chance. Using that baseball analogy, he's been in that situation. He's up at the plate. They need a hit. They didn't need a hit, not a home run, and he strikes out. So this will be it for him, his last hurrah. But adios, Joe Biden.
Okay, that's funny. Adios. I'm not a fan, and I think his campaign was horrible, and he wasted all that money. Imagine all these big donors gave him all that money, and he couldn't even win a caucus. He had all that money, but that's the other thing. I mean, he's done because he doesn't have the grassroots contributors like Bernie Sanders has, or Warren. Even Pete to some extent. I mean, he's got big donors. That's it. They all tapped out, and now he's got to go to other big donors, and they're not going to give him $2,500 or give his PAC, $10,000 or $50,000 when he can't win anything. Who the hell's going to do that? He's done. And,
but the thing is with the donors, shame on them. I mean,
yeah,
money's a big part of this, and a candidate has to have money. There's no doubt about it. But what he reminds me a little bit about is Jeb Bush. Remember, he started the 2015 primary with $165 million. No one else even came close.
That's right.
And he went through that in about 90 days, didn't win a primary before he bowed out. So, maybe the donors will think twice next time, because those same donors will start giving to other people now,
Right.
the ones
That's
that are
right.
remaining in the race. So
That's right.
I guess it'd be nice to have that kind of money to just set a match to, because when you're giving to guys like that, you're just setting a match to your dollars. But apparently if you have enough, that's okay to do.
All right. Tell us about Bloomberg.
Oh, man. We don't have enough time, but I'll start the prelude here to
Go ahead.
Bloomberg. I dug up the article from back in my race in 2014 where Bloomberg dropped 250,000 in negative ads against me to try to take me out as sheriff of Milwaukee County. I beat his money. I beat him. Let's face it, Bloomberg didn't know who David Clarke was in 2014. Someone reached out to him, someone from the left, and said, we got to stop this guy. His persona is growing. His profile is growing. We want to stop him now. Bloomberg got pounded. We all knew that was going to happen in in Nevada the other day, last week it was. And I looked and I laughed. I had to laugh. He looked like a fish out of water. He looked like deer in the headlights. He didn't know where all the attacks were coming from. That was good. And that's the next guy I'm going after. I want that guy out. He's arrogant. And that's not just my opinion. He's smug. He buys his way through things. He thinks he can buy back his past. He's got a very negative past. He thinks he can mask that with all this money, but this is politics. And the opposition research that's out there on people, and he's got a lot. We haven't even heard the end of some of the stuff, the bad stuff on him. Once you put together opposition research, because I've had that kind of stuff done on me, I have experience with it. You bleed it. You bleed it slowly. You drip, drip, drip. You don't take a whole bunch of negative stuff, throw it out there, because then you use up all the energy. So that's why I said we haven't heard even a half of the bad stuff we're going to find out about Bloomberg. But let me just say this about Bloomberg. He is not a good guy.
He is going to win Virginia. I don't know whatever other Super Tuesday states he wins, but he's going to win Virginia and might win another state. But, I just had Ben Tribbett on, and it was interesting. I knew about this, but I hadn't really broken it down. The way the Democrat primary system, what they change is there's no winner-take-all states. Everybody knows that. But there's a 15% threshold to get delegates. So if you're running in a primary and you get 10%, 9%, 12%, you get no delegates, zero. Unless you win them in a particular congressional district, if that primary is set up that way. So, like, if you're on Super Tuesday, if you're voting in, let's pick a state, Texas, and you're voting for Klobuchar or Pete or one of these other candidates that are getting 8%, you're throwing your vote away. Sanders is going to get 35%. He's going to win the majority of the delegates because there's so many moderates competing. And Ben Tribbett was saying that is one of the things that's fueling Bernie Sanders. Having said that, Sheriff Clarke, if Bernie Sanders is the nominee, and I think he'll be, and I think it'll be Sanders-Warren, I don't think for Trump that's a cakewalk, and I don't think we can be complacent. What say you?
Oh, man. No, you're right. You're spot on. You got to take this guy seriously, because he's got a bunch of crazy followers. And he knows how to rally people. I've seen him after a couple of the primary wins, and he's full of energy, even though he's, getting up there in years, but he's full of energy. His base is rabid, and they're on the lookout to have this thing stolen from them. Everybody's pounding on Sanders from the outside. Guys like James Carville and the New York Times are saying, Sanders is making a big mistake. He needs to get out. No, he doesn't need to get out. If you want this guy out, then you're going to have to beat him. But going into, and I say this all the time because it bears repeating, if he wins the nomination, whoever wins the nomination, let's say Warren does, let's say Buttigieg does, they're going to start with 48% of the popular vote and about 200 electoral delegates. They only need 270. So they start way ahead. Trump's going to win the red states. The Democrats going to win the blue states. Those are more electoral college rich, with California and New York leading the way. Texas might be a little bit of a dogfight this time. The swing states we've talked about: Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Florida, North Carolina. Those are very key to Donald Trump. But people who are predicting a landslide, I'm telling them that's what I'm doing right now as I crisscross the country. Pump the brakes on that nonsense. Okay, we have to act like we're coming from behind. We need a sense of urgency, and when you don't have that sense of urgency, like Mrs. Bill Clinton in 2016, you lose your edge. Your voters get complacent, and that's what happened. They didn't come out for her in those 3 states that she lost that hadn't gone for Republican in like 25, 30, 40 years. Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Their voters got complacent. They got arrogant. And that's what happens when you lose your edge. We cannot lose our edge. President Trump is doing everything that he can to energize the base, but we need new voters. I saw a poll the other day, Reuters poll, turnout, and they polled in some Midwestern states, battleground states, Wisconsin, Michigan among them. And what they're finding is, one of the questions asked, that's the way polling works, and we don't have time for that, but how likely are you to vote? First they found out if you voted in 2016. If the answer is no, they ask another question: how likely are you to vote in 2020? The Democrats in those areas that they polled, they're up. They've increased are more likely to vote 10%, whereas in the rural areas, the red areas of those states, it's only gone up 1%. Mm-hmm. So we might be at the end of our, how many new voters we can find. We're still going to have to turn over sewer covers. We're still going to have to turn over rocks and find some new voters. But right now, I think the energy level in terms of the electorate, not the candidates. No one outdoes Trump in terms of the excitement, but in terms of the electorate, I think right now the Democrats have the edge. If they turn their people out, they got a better ground game than the Republicans have ever had. They're good at it. And you notice there's no panic over there. Everyone over here on our side, we're laughing and chuckling and, Sanders, how can this, this? Well, they were doing that to us. How do you like your candidate? Remember Obama when Trump won the nomination? Hey, GOP, how do you like your candidate? We got smug, or they did. They got arrogant, and I want to prevent that on our side.
I think you're right. And, Bernie Sanders is going to pick off one of these Midwestern Rust Belt states, probably Michigan. He's probably going to have a tougher time winning maybe a Florida than one of the other candidates would. He's certainly not going to win North Carolina, but they weren't going to win those states anyway. So there's not really a blue state that Trump is going to win. There's not a red state that he's going to win. So again, it comes down to these battleground states, and he's probably tougher in New Hampshire than Pete would have been. Weaker in Minnesota, right? So you kind of trade those off, but then you get again to the Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. This is where the battle's going to be, and you nailed it. I mean, what you just said, Sheriff, should put fear in the hearts of Trump supporters and also be motivating. Rural areas where we're strongest, voter activity enthusiasm up 1%. Urban areas, blue areas, up 10%. That is not a prescription for success. Don't you agree?
Right, and keep in mind that they have the edge in registered voters anyway. We'll never outdo them vote for vote, which is why I said we got to drive down their enthusiasm, and we have to find new voters for us. And I tell people, as I move across this great country, I say, watch the Electoral College map. Forget about the polls, that say, so-and-so, Trump's winning so-and-so, or someone's beating Trump. I know there's a poll in Wisconsin that says Sanders right now is leading Trump for Wisconsin. But I say, don't pay attention to those polls. Pay attention to the electoral map. And the Trump campaign is going to have a strategy that, okay, if it doesn't go Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, which was threading a needle, let's be honest, they threaded a needle there, then what is the other way to victory? What other states that are close can we pick off? That's why they're targeting Minnesota right now. Minnesota, I think they only lost by 9,000 votes, 10,000 votes in 2016. So that one's doable. And then there's a couple other states, along the way, some out in the Northeast that they went after in 2016 didn't win, but it was still close. You have to have several paths to get to the 270. If you only have one and one of those states goes down, if you only have one path and one state goes down, you're finished.
That's the problem. Here's a poll, Sheriff Clarke, that just came out moments ago. A Roanoke College poll in Virginia. It's got Sanders 49%, Trump 40%. Right, it's got him beating him by 9.
Right.
In Virginia, it's got to beat him by 9. And favorable, unfavorable. Now, this is typically a Democratic poll that comes out of Roanoke College. Normally, it's going to skew about 5 their way. So it's probably half. It's probably not 9. It's probably 5. But Trump favorability in Virginia, 32%. Unfavorable, 54%. Right? That's the president's. That's Virginia, which is supposed to be a potential swing state. And he's already down by 9, and Bernie isn't even the nominee, right? So you cannot take this guy lightly, and he's got a movement. And what I've told everybody on the radio today, even the Dems, and I even told this to Congressman Whitman, the similarity between our campaign in 15-16 and Bernie Sanders is shockingly close.
Yeah, it is.
And let me tell you that the number one thing that we had that he has, and it's good and it's bad. But here was why we were such a powerful movement. Because people like me, who were there from the beginning, who were encouraging the run, didn't care if we burned the party down in the process. We could give a rat's tail. We wanted it to burn down. And so when you take that attitude for a nomination, you're very dangerous, because everybody else is trying to toe the line and they're concerned about this or that. But in my view, Marco Rubio, George W. Bush, George Jeb Bush, this Bush, that Bush, Cruz, I hated the party. So I was willing to burn the thing to a crisp and have a dumpster fire if I could get my guy and take it over. So when you have that kind of attitude and you don't care, you're dangerous in this nominating process. Don't you agree?
Yeah, and the bridge to get from your candidate, let's say it's Biden, let's say it's Buttigieg, over to Sanders is a shorter bridge when you have that attitude. You're right. We were willing to, and I'm not going to say risk it. We were tired of that party the way it was.
Exactly.
And the Democrats, you know what? Their attitude is the same right now. They're tired of these old retreads that they keep throwing up in front of the voters. The voters want some new blood. And, actually, and that's why I said Sanders comes in, maybe not as new blood, but as an interloper. And when you have that attitude, burn the damn thing down, you're right. Hey, what the hell? We'll put up with Sanders for 4 years, and then we'll see what happens after that. And that's the thing that really, really bothers me. And, I mean, in terms of scares me, is that they have more voters than we have, and they might be willing to say, you know what, we just want Trump gone. Oh, yeah, this Reuters poll also pointed out that in these Midwestern areas where the Democrat more likely to vote in 2016 than 2020 didn't vote in 2016, it said that the anti-Trump sentiment in those areas is very strong. So anyone who thinks it's going to be a cakewalk, and one thing left out, I think the Trump campaign needs to add another element, a variable to this in terms of looking forward, because that's what you have to do in elections. I'm a veteran of elections. You got to look forward. They need to start talking about the Supreme Court again. There's a potential 2 to 3 more replacements to really flip that court. That was huge. That made a lot of people be able to swallow hard and vote for Trump that maybe didn't want him. They said, we cannot risk giving the Supreme Court to someone like Hillary Clinton, and that would have been a death knell for us, for the conservative movement in America. So I think they need to play that card again. A potential 2 to 3 more Supreme Court picks added to the pie. That will energize the base. That will scare some people who might not vote on our side or who sat out in 2016. The Never Trumpers and some of those people. This is going to be interesting to see if the Never Trumpers can actually vote for Sanders.
I tell you what, I wouldn't doubt it. I never doubt anything these people do, because they're going to take the Never Trump thing to the end. but they're such a small percent, and they're so ridiculous. Like, who cares what they say? I just want them out of the administration. Sheriff David Clarke, you got to head over to Steve Bannon's war room at the historic Breitbart Embassy. I'm out of time, sir. Thank you for being with us. Welcome to Washington.
See you in a little bit.
John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth.